Yo YouTube, how are we doing? I am making a little update for you on my travel content. A few people hit me up in Instagram DMs and asked what my current setup is. I did a video on my travel content gear a couple of months ago, and then I changed it all, as I often do. I'm a bit of a gear whore, that's number one, but also I'm actually always in the process of improving the system, trying to get a balance of good quality, but also pretty slimline setup that I can take with me as I travel, because I basically create content on the road now. Works really well for me, but I've got to lug all the stuff around to be able to create content. Now, key thing for me is that's important for me in my setup is I've got a mix of kind of face the camera stuff that I create, but also do a lot of screen sharing as well, particularly when I create technical videos for the tech channel for IT Genius. And so the reason my setup is a little more complicated than most is for that reason. So I can record what's on my screen as well as record a camera looking at me. And I like to create live and then have my team actually cut up those live videos. So another thing that I do is I'll stream, but I'll also simultaneously save a high quality version of that video locally as well. So that's another important factor. Third important factor is I'm a bit of a snob. I like videography, I like photography, and so I like a good film look. And that means that I've invested a little bit more in my lighting, and I've also invested a little bit more in cameras that are a bit better quality as well, that give you like a bit of kind of that bokeh effect of a bit of a softly blurred background. Now, you can't see that from here because I'm on my phone right now, so I can show you everything. But that's the reason I do that for most of my videos. But without further ado, here is my setup. So currently rocking a MacBook Air actually, which I picked up in Taiwan. I've for many years rolled with a Chromebook, but decided to switch to a Mac just because the software that I needed unfortunately didn't run on Chrome. I tried to get things working as much as possible, but I ended up having to bring too much additional gear for the Chrome operating system to work. So it's still my favorite OS. I wish I could get away with Chrome, but here we are. We're using a Mac. I'll probably upgrade to a Pro sometime soon because it tends to slow down if I'm streaming, capturing in 4K, and then also doing something like attending a Google Meet all at the same time. It tends to crash out. But if I'm just creating content, this is fine. This was like, I don't know, I think about $1,200. So that's the main machine. Nothing fancy about it. It's the base model M2 MacBook Air. Very affordable. All right, so next up, I've got an iPad mini, and I basically primarily use that for meetings. And so I'll have my participants up there when I'm on a meeting, when I'm working away, and then I'll be making my notes and whatnot down here on my computer. Typically, I'll be typing notes into Asana. And this is usually where I do my meetings from, and that just sits on a little tripod, and it's got a little stand that the iPad just sits in, which is really cool. When I'm live streaming, I tend to not be on a meeting. So when I'm live streaming, I'll bring the actual live video up, and I'll monitor the video and monitor the comments from here. So you can see a little notification that I've gone live has popped up. Usually I'll just click that and jump in and watch myself there. Pretty straightforward. All right. So that's an iPad Pro. I use that to draw on. If I want to get the picture from that into the computer, I think I could just plug it in if I wanted to, but I actually use the Google Jamboard app. And the Jamboard app is pretty dope. It basically lets me just scribble away, stores it on the cloud. I can collaborate with other people as well. So great for presenting, but it also keeps everything that I create. And I can draw on my iPad, and it shows up on my computer, which then shows up on the screen, which is pretty dope. All right, let's talk about some of the other stuff. So we'll start with camera. Camera is, this is a pretty dope webcam. It's the biggest webcam I have seen in my life. It's called a KO, it's a Razer, R-A-Z-E-R, Razer KO, K-A-Y-O, Ultra. It's the new one, which is the Ultra. And it was, I think, nearly 500 Aussie dollars, but absolutely epic. What that does is it basically gives that nice like bokeh effect behind me, so I get a little bit of a blur. Otherwise, like you'll see stuff like the fridge and the kitchen and stuff like that. And when I'm creating business videos, I like to look nice and professional, so that gives a nice effect. It focuses really well. It's good in low light, and that's much better than lugging around a fully fledged DSLR camera, which is what I used to do, Or I used to use my film camera. I've got a Fujifilm film camera there. But every time I plugged my film camera into the computer, I would have to change all the settings to get it set up for streaming, because usually it sits on the setting for like street photography and you know, having fun out and about, and silly little things like I set it up so it switches itself off after 2 minutes when I'm taking photos down the street, but when I come back to the hotel or the Airbnb and I want to stream, it needs to stay on and never turn off. So, you know, I'd have to change that every time. So I wanted something separate. I did lug around 2 cameras for my last trip, but now I just decided to switch to this because this plugs in with USB-C. I don't have to worry about capture cards. It acts just like a webcam, no extra peripherals needed, and it's badass. It basically looks pretty much as good as a webcam. It's very light. And it also looks great, so I'm very happy with that. It also has this nice, excuse me, this nice little privacy feature where you can just like switch it off, and you can see it just literally cuts the feed. So that's a nice little privacy feature. And if you have a look at the actual picture here, notice that I look nicely in focus, and everything behind me is sort of kind of like blurred out just a little bit. The lighting here is not amazing at the moment, but you get a bit of an idea. Okay, next up, audio. Never use a webcam for audio. They're terrible. So I've got a dedicated microphone here. This is just a pretty basic USB-C microphone. It's got great audio like everything from Rode. NT USB Mini is the model if you're interested. I don't bother putting headphones or anything into it to monitor the audio. I just let it do its thing, sit on the desk. Sometimes it sounds a bit better if I plop it up on something and sit it like literally in front of my mouth. But I mean, this is a pretty echoey room. In most rooms where there's a bit more carpet, that sounds really, really good and doesn't sound too far away from me. Finally, I have the Stream Deck. So this is a little Stream Deck. It plugs in via USB, and that basically plugs into my software. The software that I use is called Ecamm Live. This one only works on a Mac, but it's very, very cool software. And what this little thing does is this actually triggers different scenes on my computer. So if I press a button on my computer, this one's going to switch to sharing my screen when it works. There we go. So this one's set up with my screen and me up in the corner. This button over here is just the screen. I've got a button for the intro that will run the intro. I've got a button for the outro, so it'll fade to black and then run the outro. So I can basically do a whole live stream from start to finish just by triggering those buttons on the Stream Deck, which is really cool. So whole setup here is not crazy price-wise. Previously, when I was running a broadcasting kit and a DSLR, like it was like $5,000 worth of stuff sitting on the desk. This was, I think, like 150 Aussie dollars. This is probably a couple $100. That thing was probably the most expensive, 450. Apart from that, it's an iPad computer and an extra iPad here. So pretty straightforward setup. A couple of $1,000 for the whole lot, which is not too bad. And that lets me create content on the go. My final thoughts are your audience cares about content, not production. It's got to be at a minimum level. I mean, really, audio has to be at least a bare minimum okay. Video can be less than okay, but ideally you do want to have it okay so it's pleasurable for people to watch. But most importantly is creating content and serving your audience and serving your customers. So anyway, hope that helps you if you're interested in my setup. If you've got any improvements or you've got any questions about it, drop them down below this and I'll try to get to them. See you in the next one. Cheers.